It's tough to actually go there as a visitor. A little rowdy.
It is.
Yeah. Where did you grow up?
Bay Area, San Jose.
Oh yeah. So if you're not a New Englander and you go to
I'm soft. Northern California.
Yeah. Oh my God. They're rough. They're rough. But if you're from New England, they will literally kill for you. You know. But if you're not from New England, it takes a little while to break the core. You know, like the armor.
They're
So
we're selective with their posse.
Yeah. I used to be very selective too. Which actually, being selective with your posse is not a bad idea.
I think so many people aren't, and that's why they get in trouble.
Yeah.
You are who you surround yourself with.
Totally.
There's so much evidence that proves that.
Yeah.
You know?
All right. This is our Patreon exclusive. You guys, thank you so much for submitting questions. We got Tim Dixon here. I hope you enjoyed the podcast with him. Okay, so our first question comes from Lori, who used to play baseball in high school. And so her question is, how do you get over traumatic baseball history? Ooh. So I'm not sure if I'm assuming that's physical trauma.
Let's go both. Let's go both. Physical and mental.
Yeah, so she's got a 2-part question. The second part is, what do you think about women in Major League Baseball?
I think it's necessary. I think there's a huge culture shift that needs to happen for that. Being in the baseball space for 27 years, there's going to be a lot of barriers that need to break. And I think it's happening because they just hired an assistant female coach for the Cleveland Cavaliers for the NBA just recently. She was the head coach. I don't know her name. She was the head coach at Cal Berkeley. And they just hired the first woman ever to be hired as an assistant coach in the NBA, which is amazing. I think it's great. I think it's, again, there's a lot of barriers, but why not be the first?
Exactly. Why not? It's so funny how some things are still so segregated, isn't it?
It's actually, if you really dive into it, it's really, it's just how we're ingrained, unfortunately.
How it's always been done, right?
It's this story that's been told for generations that this is just how it is. And I think more so today than ever is people are starting to question everything. Well, why? Just because it was like that doesn't mean it has to be like that. So you're seeing these barrier breaks in all different kinds of arenas. So I love it.
Yeah, it's really great to speak up and be that challenger, because what I feel in baseball too is the people who are just diehard fans is it's going to ruin everything. Like, how will the stats ever be comparable? And how it's always been done this way. There's always been now we're just opening the gates for
But the stats have always been different for
right.
We're so different. Like, you have a 40-man roster on a big league roster is a 40-man roster, and then there's a 25-man roster, which is the people who pretty much play every day. That's 25 different personalities. There's 25 different ways of how they got there, and they're all athletic. They all have some kind of mental capacity. But think about baseball. Baseball is about savvy, situational awareness, timing. There's people that aren't, technically super strong, but they just show up on time and they can hit a ball. Let the pitcher supply. I mean, there's so many different things that really could dictate that anyone could play it as long as they put in the work and put in the practice. Here's the one thing that I would say would be unfair is to put a woman in Major League Baseball just for the sake of her being a woman. I think that's degrading. But I'm telling you, there's athletes out there, female athletes that would be, look at softball. I don't know if you watch softball. The Women's College World Series just ended, and you talk about athletes, and they play at a much closer distance than baseball. There's some of those women right now that they're amazing.
It's really exciting to see just barriers being busted down. And I think this younger generation has a really big no bullshit meter, where they are being challenged. And there's this wild book called Oneness. It's wild. It's you can maybe digest a page, and you're like, okay, I can't, I gotta just
just
take
I
gotta take a day to but she talks about how the generations that are coming into the world, that we don't really we can limit them so much with teaching them like, oh, this is how it is, this is how it is, because they're already programmed for what's to come, right? That's why kids can pick up Snapchat and all these technological things really quickly, because as we continue to evolve as humans, like they're prepared for what's coming. So we see this younger generation, which is just like, that's bullshit. Like that's just the way it's always been done. Like, and they're programmed for this.
But they're going to have a really strong support system that's going to allow them to go left when everyone else is going right.
Yeah.
They're going to have parents that are open to it. They're going to have coaches that are open to it. They're going to have to be surrounded by other individuals that want to push the boundaries. Because with that, there's judgment, there's ridicule, there's uncomfortable things that are going to happen, but it's necessary. And that one person could literally, I mean, we see it over the history of almost anything. One person decides, you know what, enough is enough. I'm tired of this. I'm going to do X. And as soon as one person does it, it gives all these other people permission to do the same thing.
I mean, Roger Bannister.
Yep.
Right?
There's just so many stories of why not be that person? If it's never happened,
why not be that person?
Yeah, stop looking to your left and to your right and say, you know what, it's me. I'm going to do it. And
Exactly.
just go.
Exactly.
Yeah. What about the mental part? What would you say?
Yeah, the mental part. So how do you get over traumatic baseball history?
Baseball is a game of failure. If you fail 70% of the time, you're really good. There's really no other sport if you're a salesperson and you close 30% of your sales, are you going to be successful? Are you going to have a job? Like if you lose 70% of your sales, are you going to be successful? No. But if you hit 300 in baseball, you're an all-star. So there's a ton of failure. For me, it's all about redefining what failure is and what these moments are. So it's simplifying. There's not a lot you could control in the game of baseball. And it's really focusing on only the things that you could control, which is typically, your work ethic, how you deal with failure, the choices that you make, your relationship with practice, all those things that you can really grab onto that give you these opportunities to kind of make that it's a long process, high school, college, and if you get drafted, then it's short season. There's 3 levels of single A, then there's double A, and then there's triple A, and then there's the big leagues. So it's just being okay with the process and not putting a timeline on it. Just doing it.
Which must be challenging in a team dynamic. So the things that you just talked about is all individual, right? Mm-hmm. And I can see, into Lori's question, the mind wanting to go up, but these people are relying on me. And so it's probably a challenge to keep that perspective in your awareness, but not get consumed with that overriding what you need to do for yourself to show up, to be yourself, to be part of the team.
I think you got to decompartmentalize, because for me, being on a baseball team, I loved my teammates. So the one thing I miss the most is the clubhouse and the camaraderie. But when it was all said and done, I had to be very selfish with my preparation so I could do my job. If I did my job and all these other 8 players did their job, we had the best chance to win. So I can't control whether these people are prepared. I could be around them and motivate them and be like, let's go. But when it's all said and done, it is a team sport with a bunch of individuals. You're the only one hitting. You're the only one pitching. You're the only one fielding and trying to throw this guy out or girl out. So, I mean, you think how I'm talking right now, it's guy, it's base, it's 40-man roster. So there's a lot of things that are ingrained in the society of baseball that need to change, but man, disruption, I love it.
Yeah, and I think it's about, like we've talked about on the podcast, the story that we tell ourselves. And so like this, traumatic baseball history, how much are we hanging on to trauma? How much of trauma is our story?
And there's so many different things traumatic. Like the first thing that came to my mind is she was hit in the head, or she had some kind of physical trauma, like a moment.
Yeah.
Maybe breaking a leg or something traumatic that it's in your head. So we would have to actually ask her the specifics of what that traumatic history is, because it could go in so many different. I immediately I've seen people get hit in the head, seen a guy get half his ear ripped off by getting hit by a pitch. Just so many traumatic things. That's what comes to mind for me, but it might not be that for her.
Right. Yeah. So we're not 100% sure, but I would say the first thing to do is to look at the story and how much that trauma is a part of your identity now, because we're gonna remain in the trauma as long as we believe that it's a part of us.
Is she a high school? What?
No,
how
she's
old
a
is
triathlete.
Oh. So she played, no longer plays.
No longer plays.
Okay.
Yeah, but it seems like she's still pretty involved. And
I said my question to her would be, how is she playing a part in finding that first female Major League Baseball player? Like, what's her role that she could play in giving someone else permission and kind of talking through these traumatic things, maybe the ability to have these conversations with someone younger that's on this pursuit and actually,
be a mentor.
And get it. Not only is that therapy great for her and her healing, but to all of a sudden support this person, whoever that may be.
Look at that. We just tasked her with greatness.
Action step.
You just gave her permission to play a bigger game in life.
Yes.
And that's awesome. And I know Lori, we know her personally. She's very eyes wide open.
I love her.
Ready to learn. Yeah, she's awesome. And she's just taking a lot in right now. This girl is crushing it.
Doing the
So
work.
I would love to, at some point, you could exchange our emails together, is hear specifically what those are, and we'll have a conversation with you about that.
Yeah. Well, Lori, if you're interested in that, then reach out to me. You know how to get a hold of me, and I'll get you connected with Tim. All right. And speaking of other amazing, badass ladies, we've got Kat, who's training for an ultra endurance event. So she's training for Ultraman, which is a 3-day triathlon, which is in your future. We got to get Ironman out of the way first.
Love it.
And she's lucky to have 4 people who are going to go to the race with her to crew. I'm finding in training that I get really grumpy after big volume days. And can I take steps to make sure that I don't growl at my crew members during the race? Or is it best just to prepare them for the rough patches in my mood?
Oh, I love it. Both. Why are we grumpy? Let's define it. Like, what does grumpy mean, and how do we redefine it where we celebrate the pain?
Where she's broken, she's breaking herself down.
No,
man.
I kind of love it.
Oh, you'd love this girl. I know her well.
I love when people push boundaries, and to the point of physical exhaustion, grumpiness. But obviously, this crew that she has knows her. So one of the best things, and one of the things we neglect to do, is hey, I'm a guy that really likes to get to the solution fast. I like to move fast, and there's times where I might feel that I'm leaving you behind. If that ever happens, just let me know so I could pause and get back to where I need to be.
Oh, I need to communicate with you, BJ, every day especially before coffee.
Yeah, first thing in the morning. Yeah. All right. What are we doing with finances?
What's our promise to universe today list?
So it's that conversation with her crew saying, hey, obviously you know that I'm grumpy sometimes, and let them, maybe they perceive it differently.
That's huge.
So what do they see? Because our internal dialogue is typically different than, there may be a miscalibration there of what she thinks versus what they think. And then once they have that open conversation, okay, how do we want to deal with this? How do we want to get to the movement forward? A lot of the questions that I ask with the people I work with, what does support from me look like to you? Because I have a definition of how I want to support you, but what does that look like to you? Like, what does that support look like to you? So it's asking those questions and getting on the same page, and okay, we're in this grumpy moment. We talked about this. So we take the emotions out of it, and we have some things in place. All right, boom, let's just move forward. Let's not sit here. Let's just move forward so we can get to where we want to go.
Right, because the grumpy is not Kat.
Yeah.
Kat's amazing, right? She's
grumpy is the
grumpy is just the energy that's being labeled as being grumpy. It's not who she is.
But grumpy could also be, she's a competitor.
She's
she's pushing it,
yeah,
right? And she's thing things
up. So how do we celebrate that?
Right.
Instead of being grumpy, be like, oh, hell yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
And it may be the state of neutrality where we don't add the emotion to it to pull her out of the grumpiness to get her back on course, if that's the case.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. Define it. Let's get all on the same page.
What does grumpy actually look like to her?
Yeah.
I think you need to have, Kat, I think you need to have a conversation because, sometimes grumpy, if we've got a crew of people that are trying to pull us out of that, that's going to make us grumpier, right? Like, so if you just want to be left there and be served, remember, these people are there to serve you and they love you. That's why they're there. So allow them just to serve. And I think that that's also a self-worth thing. Like,
you are worthy of having a crew to support you.
I might be showing up like a shit show right now, but they're going to serve me unconditionally either way.
There's some power to the shit show, though. I mean, a lot of times, the chaos creates some movement. Why is this chaotic? Why do I feel this way? Let's really dive into the feelings and let's get out of ego. Let's get emotions are always going to betray you. I don't know how many times people said, I had an emotional reaction and it served me. It typically ends in regret. So how do we get out of this one moment and just say, okay, why is this happening? Let's really define it. They might not even think she's grumpy, or maybe they have a different definition of it. And they're like, you need to do this, or we need to have this conversation. But again, she's got a team.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And perhaps the experience at Ultraman is going to be so epic that, like, grumpy, you're going to be like, grumpy? No way, man. I'm so grateful to even be here.
Sure, yeah.
Whoa, this is super intense. I might be a little quiet right now, but I don't think you need to plan on being grumpy. It's maybe if this happens.
It's a pattern.
Yeah.
The grumpiness maybe has become a pattern. And that grumpiness, okay, so we only have so much energy, especially what she's the ultra, how many, 3 days?
3 days.
Yeah.
There's a lot of energy expended there.
Yeah.
She doesn't have time to waste her energy on being grumpy. So how do you use that energy to fuel the end, the ultimate thing? Not this one moment, but it's just saying, you know what? I feel this way. It's part of the process. Let's move forward.
Yeah,
Simplifying it.
Yeah, it's going to be all the feels.
Yeah.
Something like that, it's going to be all the feels.
Oh, I mean, I could imagine that every emotion that you could possibly think of is going to show up during this event. And it's acknowledging it, but not giving it power.
Yeah, stay neutral.
I hear you. I hear you, Grumpy, but I'm too busy being a badass.
Yeah, it's just a fragment.
I don't have time for this.
Yeah, I like that. It's just a fragment, and it's like, are we going to give that fragment power?
Yeah. So many people want to give it energy and give it power, but don't ignore it. It's a real, raw emotion. Yeah, I see you. I hear you, but I'm moving this way. Thank you, but I know you're trying to protect me, but I'm going here. Bye.
I love it. That's the inner
Great.
dialogue. I love it. Awesome. Okay. Thanks so much, Tim.
Thanks,
you
Tim.
guys, Kat, Lori, thanks so much for submitting your questions. You guys are awesome. And we'll do more of this in the future. Cool.